Clara stood in the darkened hallway of her sister's house, her hands trembling as she clutched the baby blanket. She had told herself 100 times that she wouldn't go through with it, that she would be strong enough to face her fate as a woman who could never carry a child. But as she listened to the soft cries of the newborn in the nursery, something inside her broke. Helen, her younger sister, was asleep in the next room. Exhausted from childbirth, she had left the door ajar, trusting the safety of her home, never imagining danger could come from family. Clara moved silently, her breath shallow, her heart beating so loudly she feared it might wake the baby. She stepped inside the nursery. The smell of talcum powder and fresh linen filled the air. The baby stirred, tiny fists stretching in the dim light. Clara's eyes filled with tears. "You should have been mine," she whispered, her voice cracking. "If the world was fair, you would be mine." The baby made a small cooing sound, as if answering her. That was all it took. Clara gathered the infant into her arms, pressing the soft bundle against her chest. She lingered for only a moment. One last look at the quiet house, her sister's peaceful face beyond the open door, before disappearing into the night. By dawn, Clara was gone. For Helen, the following hours were a nightmare unraveling in slow motion. She awoke to an empty crib. Panic surged through her veins as she searched the house, calling her baby's name though the child had not yet learned to answer. Within minutes, the police were summoned, the neighborhood sealed off. But no clues were found. The baby had vanished without a trace, as if swallowed by the earth. The investigation dragged on for months. Flyers were distributed, suspects questioned, but the case soon went cold. Helen's grief became a permanent shadow over her life. She aged quickly, her once bright eyes dulled by sorrow. What she didn't know, what she could never have imagined, was that the enemy had been her own blood. Meanwhile, Clara was already building a new life. She dyed her hair, sold her car, and moved to a small city several hours away. With money she had saved for years, she rented a modest apartment under a false name. To her neighbors, she was a widow who had just given birth and wanted a quiet life with her daughter. No one asked too many questions. She named the child Emily. The name felt like a fresh beginning, a way to erase the crime of that night. To everyone else, Emily was her miracle, her late husband's final gift before his tragic death. The story was rehearsed and polished until even Clara began to half believe it herself. Raising Emily was both bliss and torment. Clara poured all her love into the child, yet lived under constant fear. She avoided cameras, refused visitors, and changed addresses every few years. When Emily grew old enough to ask questions, Clara had ready answers. Her father had died in an accident. They moved often because it was too painful to stay in one place. Emily accepted the stories. Children rarely doubt the only parent they know. But every time Emily smiled, every time she clutched her mother's hand, Clara was reminded of the fragile foundation of their life. One slip, one curious neighbor, one encounter with the wrong person, and the truth could come crashing down. Years passed. Emily grew into a bright, curious girl, with dark hair like Clara's and Helen's same green eyes. Clara doted on her, but kept her close, never letting her out of sight for long. She was protective to the point of obsession. At school, Emily sometimes noticed the differences between her and other families. Other children had grandparents who visited, cousins who came for holidays. Emily had only her mother, and Clara never spoke of relatives. Whenever Emily asked, Clara would stiffen. "Our family is just us two," she would say firmly, as if the conversation were closed. For a while, that answer was enough. But the older Emily grew, the harder it became for Clara to shield her from the world. Emily longed for friends, independence, a life beyond the walls of their carefully constructed existence. Clara, terrified of losing her, held tighter. The tension between freedom and fear began to stretch thin, though neither of them yet understood how fragile it truly was. On Emily's 20th birthday, Clara baked a cake. They laughed together in the small kitchen, their faces lit by candlelight. Clara looked at her daughter, her stolen treasure, and felt an ache of both pride and dread. 20 years had passed since that night. 20 years of lies and love, of hiding and surviving. But fate has a way of catching up with even the most carefully guarded secrets. That night, after Emily had gone to bed, Clara felt a sharp pain in her chest. She gripped the edge of the table, gasping, trying to call out, but no sound escaped her lips. The room spun. She collapsed to the floor, the cake knife clattering beside her. By morning, Clara was gone. And with her death, the first crack appeared in the life Emily thought she knew. The funeral was small, quiet, almost anonymous. Only a handful of neighbors came to pay their respects. People who had known Clara only as a quiet widow with a grown daughter. No one asked about family. No relatives came forward. It was as though Clara had existed in isolation, tethered only to Emily. Emily sat in the front row of the chapel, staring at the coffin. Her face was pale, her hands clutched tightly in her lap. She felt hollow, as if she had been cut adrift from the world. Clara had always been her anchor, her protector, the one constant in her life. Now, without her, Emily felt as though the ground beneath her feet had crumbled. When the service ended, Emily returned to the apartment they had shared. The silence inside was suffocating. For the first time, she was truly alone. She walked through the rooms aimlessly, her mother's scent still lingering in the air, her belongings scattered as if she might walk in at any moment. But Clara would never return. That night, unable to sleep, Emily began sorting through Clara's things. At first, it was simple: clothes, books, jewelry. But in the back of a dresser drawer, wrapped in layers of old newspaper, she found something that made her blood run cold: a bundle of documents. Her birth certificate was there, but the paper looked different from the one she had seen before. Faded ink, the seal barely legible. Next to it lay a passport with Clara's photograph, but the name on it wasn't Clara. It was Margaret Turner. Emily blinked, confused. She pulled out more papers, another ID card, another name. 3, 4, 5 different identities, all with her mother's face. Her hands shook as she unfolded an old photograph tucked inside the stack. It was of a woman she recognized instantly as Clara, but younger, standing beside another woman who looked startlingly like her. The second woman's smile was warm, her arms cradling a baby wrapped in a hospital blanket. On the back of the photo were written words in faded ink: Helen and her little miracle, 2002. Emily's stomach tightened. She had never heard of a Helen. She had never been told of cousins, aunts, or any family. Yet here was proof. Clara had known someone named Helen, and that someone had once held a newborn. A newborn around the same year Emily had been born. The room seemed to close in on her. "Who am I?" she whispered, the sound trembling in the empty apartment. The next days blurred together. Emily tried to ignore the gnawing unease, but the questions wouldn't leave her. She looked again and again at the documents, at the photograph. Had her mother been hiding from something? Why so many names? And who was Helen? The neighbors offered little comfort. They spoke kindly of Clara, but knew almost nothing about her. She kept to herself. One elderly woman said, "Always so protective of you. We thought she'd lost family long ago. But she loved you, dear." That much was clear. Love. Yes, Clara had loved her. Emily never doubted that. But love built on lies was suddenly a fragile thing. One evening, while digging through a locked box she found beneath the bed, Emily uncovered more unsettling items: stacks of cash, old bus tickets, and a bracelet engraved with the initials H.W. She turned it over in her hands, a sense of dread pooling in her stomach. Who was H.W.? And why had Clara hidden everything so carefully? Far away, in a quiet suburb, Helen sat at her kitchen table, staring at an envelope she had received 2 days earlier. There was no return address. Inside was a single piece of paper, typed, "Your daughter is alive." For 20 years, Helen had lived with grief. She had never stopped searching, never stopped hoping, though the police had long since closed the case. She had buried herself in work, in survival, but the wound of that night never healed. And now, suddenly, impossibly, this letter reopened it. She wanted to believe. But hope was dangerous. What if it was a cruel trick? Still, the possibility was enough to set her heart racing. She began making calls, reaching out to old contacts in law enforcement, determined to follow this new trail no matter where it led. Back in the city, Emily's life was unraveling. With no relatives to call, no father to speak of, and no legal clarity about her identity, she felt increasingly lost. When she tried to apply for a job, her paperwork raised questions. The birth certificate was too old, the passport appeared suspicious. She was told politely but firmly that her documents might not be valid. For the first time, Emily realized the scale of her problem. Without her mother, she might not even exist in the eyes of the state. And she wasn't the only one who knew it. One evening, as she returned from the grocery store, she found a note slipped under her door. The handwriting was messy, scrawled in black ink. "I know who you are. Meet me tomorrow, or everyone else will too." Emily's hands trembled as she read it again and again. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Someone knew. Someone had been watching. And her mother was no longer there to protect her. Emily barely slept that night. The note lay on the kitchen table, its ink glaring at her like a wound. "I know who you are." The words turned over and over in her mind until she felt sick. By morning, she had convinced herself it was a prank. Maybe some cruel joke by a neighbor. But deep down, she knew better. Someone had seen through her mother's carefully built life. Someone had been watching. She debated ignoring the message. But fear gnawed at her, and curiosity pushed her forward. Whoever had left it clearly wanted something. If she ignored them, would they go to the police? The thought made her chest tighten. What if her whole life was exposed as a lie? The next day, at the appointed time, Emily walked to the park where the note instructed her to go. The air was crisp, the playground nearly empty except for a man sitting on a bench. He was in his 50s, his hair thinning, his eyes sharp. He waved her over casually, as if they were old friends. "You look just like her," he said when she hesitated. Emily frowned. "Like who?" "Your real mother." He smirked. "Helen." The name struck her like a blow. She forced herself to stay calm. "You've made a mistake." He leaned closer. "No mistake. I lived next door to Clara when she first brought you home. I always knew something was off. No hospital visits. No father. Just a woman with a baby that didn't quite fit." Her stomach churned. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because," he said, his smile twisting into something cruel. "Secrets are expensive. You want me to keep quiet. You'll make it worth my while." Emily stepped back, her pulse racing. "I don't have money." "Then find some," he snapped. "Your mother left you something, I'm sure. She was careful, but not careful enough. If you don't pay, I'll go straight to the authorities. They'll tear your life apart, girl. You'll lose everything." He scribbled a number on a scrap of paper and shoved it into her hand. 1 week. Then he walked away, leaving Emily trembling in the cold. That night, Emily sat surrounded by the documents she had found. The forged IDs, the stacks of cash in the locked box, the photograph of Helen. She wanted to scream. Her entire life, every memory, every story, suddenly felt like a cage built from lies. Was Clara really her mother at all? Was Helen the woman in the photo, her true family? And if so, why had Clara stolen her? She couldn't ask the only person who knew. Clara had taken the answers to her grave, but perhaps not all the answers. Driven by desperation, Emily began digging deeper into her mother's belongings. She searched through drawers, boxes, even the old storage trunk in the closet. Hidden beneath folded blankets, she found an envelope marked "Do Not Open." Her hands shook as she tore it open. Inside was a letter, written in Clara's familiar, careful script. "My dearest Emily, if you are reading this, then I am gone. There are truths I could never bring myself to tell you while I lived. I was afraid of losing you, afraid that if you knew the past, you would turn away from me. But you deserve to know." Emily's breath caught as her eyes darted across the page. The letter didn't explain everything, but it confirmed what she had begun to suspect. She was not Clara's biological daughter. Clara admitted she had taken her from her sister, Helen, who had given birth to her in 2002. "I told myself I was saving you. I told myself I could love you more than anyone else ever could. Perhaps it was selfishness. Perhaps it was madness. But I could not let you go." The words blurred as tears filled Emily's eyes. She pressed the letter to her chest, sobbing. Her mother, her kidnapper, had stolen her from her real family. The woman she had loved, trusted, depended on for 20 years had built her world on a crime. And yet, Clara had loved her. That love had been real, hadn't it? Emily's heart twisted with grief and betrayal all at once. Across town, Helen was on the phone with a retired detective who had once worked her daughter's case. "I received a letter," she told him, her voice trembling. "It said my daughter is alive." The detective sighed. "Helen, it's been 20 years. I don't want to raise false hope. This wasn't a prank. I know it. Please, help me. Just one more time." The man hesitated, then agreed to meet her. For the first time in years, Helen felt something stirring inside her, a fragile, dangerous hope. Meanwhile, Emily's problems were multiplying. The blackmailer's calls grew more aggressive. He claimed to know about Clara's stashes of money, threatened to expose her unless she handed it over. But money wasn't her biggest fear anymore. Her biggest fear was that he was right, that if the authorities found out, she would be branded not as a victim, but as a fraud, an illegal ghost with no past. One night, after yet another threatening call, Emily sat in the dark, clutching the bracelet with the initials H.W. etched into it. Helen W., the woman in the photograph, her real mother. For the first time, she whispered the word aloud. Mom. It felt strange, foreign, but also somehow right. She didn't know yet that Helen was searching for her too. And she didn't know that the blackmailer wasn't the only shadow circling her. Someone else had discovered Clara's secret. And unlike the blackmailer, this someone wasn't interested in money. They wanted Emily herself. The city had never felt so hostile. For most of her life, Emily had walked the streets without fear, blending into the crowds like any other young woman. But now, every stranger's glance seemed loaded with suspicion. Every sound behind her felt like footsteps that lingered too close, too long. The blackmailer's voice echoed in her mind. 1 week. Pay me, or I ruin you. But ruin was already spreading, like cracks in glass. Emily tried to go about her routine, shopping for food, visiting the library, but she could feel it. Someone was watching. One evening, as she left the grocery store, she noticed a dark car idling across the street. Its engine purred softly, its windows tinted. She walked faster. The car didn't move. But the next night, it was there again. And the night after that. By the fourth evening, she was certain. She was being followed. Emily's first instinct was to call the police, but she froze with the phone in her hand. What would she say? My documents are fake. My entire identity might be illegal. Please help me. The very act of seeking protection could destroy her life. Instead, she returned to Clara's belongings, searching for answers. She scoured every box, every hidden envelope, every scrap of paper, hoping for a clue. At the bottom of an old suitcase, she found a notebook filled with Clara's handwriting. Most of it was lists, grocery expenses, places they had lived. But near the back, something darker emerged. Pages of notes about keeping her safe, warnings about him, and references to never letting him find her. Emily frowned. Who was him? The blackmailer? Someone else? Her chest tightened as she read the final page, written shakily, as if Clara had been afraid even while writing it. If he ever finds out she's alive, it will be the end. He cannot have her. He must never know. Emily slammed the notebook shut, her heart pounding. Was this the reason her mother had kept them in hiding for so long? Not just the kidnapping, but something more? Someone Clara had feared? Meanwhile, Helen's search was gaining traction. The retired detective had reluctantly agreed to reopen her daughter's file unofficially. Together, they began combing through records, searching for anomalies, birth certificates that didn't match, school registrations that appeared out of nowhere. Late one evening, the detective called her. I think I found something, he said. A girl named Emily Walker. No trace of her before 2002. No hospital record of her birth. Just she appears in school records around age 6. Always moving, never staying long. The mother, Clara Walker, died last week. Helen's hand trembled. Where is she now? She's still in the city, living alone. Helen pressed the phone to her chest, tears streaming down her face. After 20 years of emptiness, she whispered her daughter's name aloud for the first time, Emily. But while Helen was closing in, so were darker forces. The blackmailer called again, his tone sharper now. Time's up. If you don't pay by tomorrow, I'll make sure the world knows who you really are. Do you want to go to prison? Do you want them to drag you through the mud as the daughter of a kidnapper? Emily's voice shook. You don't understand. I don't even know who I am. Exactly, he sneered. Which means you have no power, no rights. You don't exist. That makes you mine to destroy. She hung up, her hands trembling. But that night, something far more terrifying happened. Emily was lying in bed, the apartment silent around her, when she heard the creak of a floorboard. She sat up, holding her breath. The sound came again, slow, deliberate steps in the hallway. Her blood turned to ice. Someone was inside. She grabbed the heavy lamp from her bedside table, clutching it like a weapon. The footsteps stopped just outside her door. She could hear breathing, steady, calm, not hurried. And then, just as suddenly, the sound retreated. The door to the apartment clicked softly shut. Emily rushed into the hallway. The front door was ajar, the lock scratched as if forced. Whoever had come in hadn't taken anything. They had only wanted her to know they could. The next morning, desperate and terrified, Emily decided she couldn't face this alone. She packed a small bag and went to the address of the only person she thought might help, the old neighbor who had blackmailed her. When he opened the door, he smirked. "Come to pay up?" "I don't have money," she said, her voice breaking. "But someone else is after me. Someone worse than you. Please, tell me what you know about my past. Who was my real mother?" The man studied her for a moment, then leaned closer. "You think Clara just stole you because she wanted a baby?" "No. She was running, hiding you from a man who would have destroyed you. That's why she never stopped looking over her shoulder." Emily's pulse quickened. "Who?" The blackmailer's smile widened. "Your father." Emily's breath caught. "He's dead. Clara told me." She lied. "He's alive. And if he learns you exist, you'll wish you were never born." The words sent a chill through her bones. She staggered back, her mind reeling. Her father alive? And dangerous? The shadows around her were no longer just about blackmail. They were about survival. Emily walked the streets in a daze, the blackmailer's words echoing like poison in her mind. "Your father is alive. And if he learns you exist, you'll wish you were never born." For years, Clara's fear, her obsession with secrecy, had seemed paranoid. Now Emily understood. Clara hadn't just been running from the law. She had been running from him. But who was he? And why would Clara think he was such a danger? She had no answers, only the suffocating certainty that her life was closing in from all sides. The blackmailer wanted money. Strangers were breaking into her home. A shadow from her past was rising like a storm. She felt trapped in a nightmare. That same night, Helen sat in her car outside Emily's apartment building. The detective had tracked down the address, and Helen had driven for hours, her hands shaking on the steering wheel. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times over the years, meeting her lost daughter again. But what could she say? "I'm your real mother. The woman you loved all your life was my sister, and she stole you from me." Would Emily hate her? Would she even believe her? At last, Helen climbed out of the car and walked to the entrance. She pressed the buzzer. No answer. She pressed again. Silence. Then, as she turned to leave, she saw a figure moving inside the building. A young woman, pale, tired, her eyes wary. Their eyes met through the glass door. Helen's heart stopped. She knew. Even after 20 years, she knew. "Emily," she whispered. But Emily didn't open the door. She turned and ran up the stairs, disappearing into the shadows. Inside her apartment, Emily pressed her back against the door, her chest heaving. She had seen the woman's face, older, lined with grief, but unmistakably similar to her own. The same green eyes, the same curve of the jaw. It was her, the woman from the photograph, the woman in Clara's letter, her real mother. Emily sank to the floor, shaking. She wanted to open the door, to collapse into the stranger's arms, but fear held her back. Her entire life had been a lie. How could she trust anything now? The blackmailer didn't wait long. The next evening, he called again. "Final chance," he said coldly. "You give me the money, or I'll sell what I know to the people who'll pay much more than you can." Emily swallowed hard. "Who?" "Your father's people." Her heart froze. "You know him?" "Oh, I know enough," he sneered. "And believe me, he's been looking for you. I've seen his men sniffing around already. If you think I'm bad, wait until they get their hands on you. They don't care about money. They care about control." Emily hung up before he could finish. For hours, she paced the apartment, her thoughts spiraling. If Clara had hidden her from her father, there must have been a reason. What kind of man was he? Why would he want her now, after all these years? And then she remembered Clara's last words in the notebook. He must never know. 2 days later, the danger erupted into violence. Emily returned home to find her apartment door smashed open. Inside, everything had been ransacked, drawers pulled out, papers scattered, furniture overturned. On the wall, scrawled in black spray paint, was a single word, "mine." Emily staggered back, her throat tight. Whoever had done this wasn't just searching. They were claiming her. Panicked, she fled down the stairwell, her bag clutched to her chest. As she burst into the street, she nearly collided with someone. "Emily!" She froze. Helen stood before her, breathless, desperate. "Please, don't run. I'm not here to hurt you." Emily's eyes filled with tears. Why? Why didn't you protect me? Helen's face crumpled. I tried. I searched for you every day for 20 years. Clara, she was my sister. She took you. You're my daughter, Emily. Please, please believe me. The world tilted. Emily wanted to scream, to collapse, to believe. But before she could answer, a black car screeched to a halt at the curb. Two men jumped out, their faces hard, their movements precise. Helen grabbed Emily's arm. Run! They sprinted down the street as the men gave chase. Emily's lungs burned, her vision blurred, but adrenaline carried her forward. They ducked into an alley, weaving through shadows until the sound of footsteps faded. Finally, bent over and gasping, Emily looked at Helen. Who are they? Helen's face was pale. Your father's men. Later, in the safety of a small motel room, Helen told Emily what Clara never had. Her father, Richard, had been a wealthy businessman with dangerous connections. He was charming, powerful, and ruthless. When Helen became pregnant, he demanded the child be raised under his control. Helen refused. That refusal had sparked years of terror, threats, and violence. Clara, unable to have children of her own, had made a desperate choice. On the night Helen gave birth, she had taken the baby, disappearing to protect her from Richard's reach. Emily's mind reeled. So she didn't just steal me, she was hiding me. Helen nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. She thought she was saving you. And now that she's gone, he knows. He'll come for you himself. Emily shivered, the weight of the truth crashing down. The blackmailer had been right. The real danger wasn't exposure. It was her father. The motel room was dim, the hum of the old air conditioner filling the silence. Emily sat on the edge of the bed, her hands tangled in her hair, staring at the floor. Helen sat across from her, her eyes red but steady. For the first time in her life, Emily was looking at her real mother. But the word felt heavy, foreign, impossible. You can't just expect me to forget everything, Emily whispered. Clara raised me. She was my mother. Helen's voice trembled. I know, and I'll always hate her for what she did. But I'll also thank her for keeping you alive. Because if Richard had found you back then, you'd have been nothing more than a possession to him. Emily lifted her gaze, searching Helen's face for lies. But all she saw was grief and love. Raw, desperate love. Tears burned Emily's eyes. She wanted to believe. She wanted to fall into Helen's arms and let the years of separation dissolve. But another part of her, the part that had been betrayed, lied to, hidden away, kept her frozen. I don't know who I am anymore, Emily said. You're my daughter, Helen whispered fiercely. That's who you are? Nothing Richard says or does can change that. But Richard wasn't a man to be defied. 2 nights later, Emily awoke in the motel to the sound of breaking glass. Before she could scream, a hand clamped over her mouth. She struggled, kicking wildly, but the intruders were strong, efficient. Helen fought too, swinging a lamp at one of the men, but she was shoved hard against the wall. Emily's world blurred as a hood was pulled over her head. She was dragged outside, shoved into a vehicle, and driven away. Her last memory before darkness swallowed her was Helen's desperate cry. Emily! When she woke, Emily was bound to a chair in a dim warehouse. The smell of oil and rust filled the air. Her wrists ached against the rope. She blinked against the harsh light overhead and saw the blackmailer standing a few feet away, grinning. Told you you'd wish you'd listened, he said. She spat the words out through clenched teeth. You sold me out. He shrugged. You were worth more to them than to me. Simple math. Before she could answer, a door creaked open. Footsteps echoed on the concrete. A tall man entered, his presence commanding, his face stern but oddly familiar. His dark eyes locked onto her with chilling certainty. Richard, her father. So, he said, his voice deep, measured. The little ghost finally appears. Emily's breath caught. She wanted to scream at him, deny him, but fear pinned her tongue. Richard circled her like a predator. Your aunt thought she could hide you. For 20 years, I searched. And now here you are. Mine at last. I'm not yours, Emily hissed, though her voice shook. His eyes narrowed. You're my blood. That makes you mine. You'll come with me, willingly or not. The world I control is vast, and you'll stand beside me, whether you like it or not. Emily shook her head, her chest heaving. I'm not a thing you own. Richard leaned closer, his cold breath on her face. You'll learn. Back at the motel, Helen was frantic. She called the detective, sobbing, "They took her. They took my baby." He didn't hesitate. "We'll find her." "But Helen, Richard is dangerous. If he has her, we'll need more than the police. He owns half of them." Helen's hands shook. "Then I'll do it myself. I won't lose her again." She began calling every contact, every friend she still had. Desperation gave her strength she hadn't known she possessed. Meanwhile, in the warehouse, Emily's resolve hardened. The blackmailer lounged nearby, smirking, but she saw the greed in his eyes, the weakness. He wasn't loyal to Richard, only to money. When Richard stepped out to take a call, Emily turned to him. "You think he'll pay you what you want? You're nothing to him. The moment he's done with me, you'll be disposable." The blackmailer frowned, uncertainty flickering across his face. "You know I'm right," Emily pressed. "Help me, and we both get out alive. Stay, and he'll bury us both." The man hesitated, glancing toward the door. His greed wrestled with his fear. Before he could decide, the door burst open. Helen stormed in, clutching a metal pipe. Behind her, the detective aimed a pistol, his voice steady. "Step away from the girl." The blackmailer swore under his breath, raising his hands. Helen ran to Emily, cutting the ropes with trembling fingers. "Are you hurt?" Emily threw her arms around her mother, sobbing. For the first time, she didn't resist. For the first time, she allowed herself to feel the truth. "Mom," she whispered. Helen's tears fell onto her hair. "I've got you, baby. I've got you." But the moment of reunion shattered as Richard returned, flanked by two armed men. The warehouse filled with tension, the air electric with violence waiting to erupt. Richard's gaze burned with fury. "You think you can steal from me again, Helen? First 20 years ago and now?" He raised a hand, signaling his men. "Take them both." Helen pushed Emily behind her, her heart pounding. "You'll have to kill me first." Richard's lips curved into a cold smile. "Gladly." The warehouse erupted into chaos. Richard's men raised their guns, the detective shouted warnings, and Helen tightened her grip on the pipe, ready to defend her daughter with her life. Emily's pulse thundered in her ears, every second stretching into eternity. The detective fired first. One of Richard's guards crumpled, blood spilling onto the concrete. Gunfire exploded, echoing like thunder inside the cavernous room. Helen dragged Emily behind a stack of crates as bullets shredded the air around them. "Stay down," she screamed, shielding Emily with her own body. Emily's breath came in ragged bursts. Fear clawed at her, but something else flared inside too, an anger that had been building for 20 years. Richard barked orders, his voice cutting through the gunfire. "Find the girl. Don't let her escape." Emily's eyes darted to the blackmailer, who still crouched nearby, trembling. His greed was gone now, replaced by sheer terror. "Help me," Emily hissed. "Cut me a way out." He glanced at her, his eyes darting to Richard, then back to her. And finally, perhaps out of self-preservation, he nodded. As the fight raged, he pointed toward a back exit, half hidden behind machinery. "There. Go now." Helen grabbed Emily's hand. "Come on." They sprinted, weaving between crates. The detective held Richard's men at bay, shouting, "Run! I'll cover you." But Richard spotted them. His roar shook the air. "Emily!" Bullets sprayed, one whizzing past Emily's ear. Another grazed Helen's shoulder, making her stumble. She cried out, but forced herself up, blood staining her blouse. They reached the back door, only to find it chained shut. "No!" Helen gasped, tugging desperately. Richard's footsteps pounded closer. "You can't run from me, girl. You never could." Emily turned, her chest heaving. For the first time, she met his eyes fully. And she saw it. The hunger, the obsession, the twisted conviction that she belonged to him. Something inside her snapped. She stepped forward, her voice trembling but fierce. "You're not my father." Richard froze. The words seemed to wound him more deeply than bullets could. "You're a stranger," Emily continued, her voice rising. "You think blood makes you my family? Clara lied to me. You hunted me. You hurt everyone I love. You're nothing to me." Richard's face darkened with rage. Ungrateful little. But before he could finish, Helen swung the pipe with all her strength. It connected with Richard's skull in a sickening crack. He staggered, dazed, dropping his gun. "Run, Emily!" Helen screamed. But Emily didn't move. Not this time. She snatched up Richard's fallen weapon and leveled it at him. Her hands shook violently, but her aim was true. Richard stared at her, blood trickling down his temple. You won't shoot me. You're mine. You'll see that one day. Her finger tightened on the trigger. Time slowed. She saw flashes, Clara's gentle smile, Helen's desperate love, 20 years of lies and stolen moments. She saw herself as a child, searching for answers in the shadows. And she realized, if she didn't end this, she'd never be free. A deafening shot rang out. Richard collapsed, his body hitting the floor with finality. Silence followed, broken only by Helen's sobs. Emily stood frozen, the gun still smoking in her hand. She had pulled the trigger. She had ended him. Later, the police arrived, flooding the warehouse with flashing lights and shouting voices. The detective, bleeding from a wound in his arm, assured them Richard's empire would crumble without him. But Emily barely heard. She sat outside the warehouse, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the horizon. Helen sat beside her, clutching her hand like she would never let go again. You did what you had to, Helen whispered. You saved us both. Emily's throat tightened. She wanted to believe that. But the weight of what she had done pressed down on her like iron. Weeks passed. The headlines screamed about Richard's downfall, about the empire collapsing, arrests sweeping through the city. To the world, Emily was a survivor. To Helen, she was a daughter returned. But at night, Emily lay awake, haunted by the echo of the gunshot, by the face of the man she had killed, the man who claimed to be her father. She had dreamed of freedom, but freedom came with chains of its own. The twist came months later. A letter arrived for Emily, delivered by hand, sealed in heavy black wax. No return address, just her name. She opened it with trembling fingers. Inside, a single sentence in neat, deliberate handwriting. Blood never dies. Her heart stopped. The signature beneath made her blood run cold. Clara,